Bava Metzia, Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph. When money is worthless, yulichenu אחריו אפילו למדי. The shiur today is sponsored by the Isaacson family. Thank you very much, Mesh. As I mentioned the other day, I always knew you were listening, but there's a big difference to knowing you out there somewhere and having you with us, and we appreciate your being here. I know you've been part of the Matmonim for almost since the beginning, I think. I don't remember when you started, but almost since the beginning. Mesh and his wife have dedicated this shiur and the Ilu Nishmas, their daughter, Dina Uriah Bat Moshe Yehudit Isaacson, who they lost tragically, and the Shloshim ends today because Yom Tov comes now. So our hearts are with you and our thoughts are with you, and think of you and appreciate you so much. The transfer of money, a transaction, is not always measured by its economic value. There are all sorts of other reasons for money to pass hands. And when money is passing hands for reasons other than the purely economic purpose of the transaction, then we value the money very differently. So there are three psukim that we're dealing with, and then we're dealing with a Mishnah and with the Rashi on the Mishnah. The first pasuk is back in Parshas Vayikra. It's talking about a case where a person has stolen something. He was appointed as a trustee and he denied it, and he didn't give the item or the money back. He's got to repay if he swore that he didn't steal, and then he wants to do tshuva, he wants to give the money back. It's not sufficient just to give the amount back that he stole, but v'chamishi tav yosif alav, he has to add on 20%. La'asher hu lo yitnenu, he must give it to the person whose it was, b'yom ashmato, at the time of his crime. In Parshas Naso we have an almost parallel parsha in the Chumash, and the various Gemaras go through learning what it is that we learn from the one that wasn't included in the other. V'hitvadu et chatatam asher asu, also talking about a case of where there was a shvur, there was an oath swearing that he didn't take the money, and then he wants to give it back. They must acknowledge their sin. Ve'yeshivet ashamo berosho, and he must return the stolen property. Ve'chamishito yosef alav, he must add on the 20%, as we learned in Vayikra. Ve'natan la'asher asham lo. So, as I say, it seems to be a repetition. The various Gemaras, including ours, goes into the question of what you can learn from the one that you couldn't before. In the previous Daf Nun Daled, we also had some reference to that. And then the third posuk is a posuk in Yeshayahu. Hineni me'ir alehem et madai, where the Novi says, I will bring madai upon you. And what's with madai? Asher kesef lo yechashvu. When it comes to, for example, pidyon shvuim, as the Metzudos learns it, if they've taken hostages. It's amazing how often in the last little while we've had hostages in the Gemara. If they've taken hostages, you can't negotiate with them with money, because the hostages are more valuable to them than the money. Doesn't that just sound so familiar? Don't you? You can't trade with them. They are so cruel that they want the people, not the money. Lo yechashvu, asher kesef lo yechashovu. Money becomes meaningless to them. V'zahav lo yachbetzuvo, and you can offer them gold, and they're not interested. Says Rashi, lakachat befidyo nefesh, they don't want it in return for hostages. Not only money, it's not just because money has lost its value, even gold you can offer them and they don't want it, because they're cruel, as the Metzudos says, lefishu achzar biyoter lezeh izkiroto levado. He mentions Madai because Madai is the cruelest of nations. Okay, those are the psukim. Says our Mishnah. Ha'ona'ah, what is ona'ah? We've been talking about ona'ah. You exploit a person, and if you're exchanging currency, what is ona'ah? Va'ata'ana, arba'a kesef, it's 4 units of kesef out of 24, so that works out to be a 6th, as we've been discussing right through. Va'ata'ana, shtei kesef, va'hoda'ah, shaveh pruta. What is the minimum amount that requires an oath if you are moide, if you agree to something that is claimed, or you agree to part of what is claimed from you? It has to be at least a pruta. In fact, says the Mishnah, chamesh prutot heim. Pruta, the idea of a pruto, which is the minimum coin possible. So it's nothing, it's a penny. It's the lowest level of currency, but there are 5 areas where that very low level of currency, almost worthless, is important halachically. Hoda'ah shaveh pruta. We've just learned that in the case of hoda'ah, when you're admitting to something that is claimed from you, it has to be worth a pruta at least in order to be mechayev shvua, to require you to take an oath. Vayisha mitkadeshet b'shaveh pruta. And strangely, you can be mekadesh a woman, you can sanctify a woman and marry a woman with a ring that's only worth a pruta. It will still work. And if you had only a pruta's worth of benefit from something that belongs to the Beis HaMikdash, it's still called me'ilah. And if you found something that is only worth a pruta in the street, you've got to, and it's something that's somewhat recognizable, you've got to publicize that you found it. You can't say it's just a pruta and nobody cares about a pruta. You've got to do that. If you steal from somebody and it's worth a pruta and you've made a shvua, yolicheno acharav afilu lemadai. Person stole a cent's worth, a penny's worth, and denied it. And later on changes his mind. He swore that he didn't. Later on he changes his mind. By that time, the owner of the pruta from whom he stole the pruta has gone to Madai. Even then he's gone to Madai, he's got to get onto an airplane, he's got to buy a ticket for hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars, and he's got to go to Madai to return the pruta. Says Rashi, further on, Rashi says, I bring this Rashi just on the idea of the pruta, because pruta is currency. That we learn from this Mishnah that a pruta is already currency. Once it's currency, it's not a question of how much currency, how much value it is, because then you get into shaky territory. If you say that a pruta is worth a certain amount to somebody, but to a millionaire it's worth nothing, and is $100 worth anything to a billionaire? So therefore, will you not have to return $100 because according to some billionaire it's not worth it? It becomes very subjective. So instead we just say, is this currency or isn't it? Is this considered money? If it's considered money and you stole it, you stole money. It's not important how much. You are a ganav, you are a thief, you need kapara, you need atonement, and the money needs to be returned, not because of the value you've taken from the other person. Maybe you stole the pruta from Bill Gates, you've still got to get the money back to him, even though it's only a pruta, which teaches us, as we'll see as we go further, the returning of the money is about you, not about him. You've got a problem. You've got to return the money, otherwise you're in a situation of Geneva. Yulichenu acharav, says Rashi, im hoda shenishba l'sheker. If he admitted, I'm sorry, I made a false oath. I stole a pruta's worth of goods, and I swore that I didn't. I was lying. I did, and it's nearly Rosh Hashanah time. I want to do tshuva. D'lo havyele kapora ad shiachzirenu liyado mamash velo lishlucho. There's no kapora. There's no atonement. He can say Hashamnu bagadnu as many times as he wants, until he returns the money personally to the person that it's stolen from, not through a shaliach. You can't send it by FedEx. You've got to do it yourself. You've got to get onto the plane and you've got to return it yourself. Until you've done so, there's no kapara. And that's the chidush in Rashi, as we'll see. It's about kapara. If it's about kapara, the issue is not the value to the person from whom you stole it. The issue is, what is this doing for you? It's a kapara. How much is a kapara worth? What is it worth to have a kapara, to have atonement? It's worth billions to a person who is spiritually sensitive. That I should have this onus of this avero that I did removed from me, and that I can do tshuva, and I can be cleansed, and I can move forward in purity. That's worth billions to me. So the value of the pruta is not just in terms of its commercial currency value. In these 5 cases, it's got a different value altogether. As it says in Parshas Naso, you should give it back la asher Hashem lo. You've got to give it back to the person you stole it from, not to anybody else. It's got to be to him. We have a different Rashi in Bava Kama because we've got almost the same Mishnah in Bava Kama, and there in Bava Kama, which we learned not long ago, yulichenu acharav afilu lemadai. You've got to send it even to Madai. The ein lo kapara ad shiachzir lanigzal atzmo, says Rashi, the same as he says here, because you don't have atonement until you've returned it to the person who's been stolen himself. Tichtiv la'asher lo. Where does he learn that from? From Parshas Vayikra. V'gabi nishba l'shekek ktiv. Says Rashi, this is learned from Parshas Vayikra. Asks the Tosfos Yom Tov on the next page, on the Mishnah himself, because the Rav, the Bar Tanura, quotes Rashi in both cases. When he learns the Mishnah in Bava Kama, he quotes the Rashi from Bava Kama, and when he learns this Mishnah here, he quotes the Rashi from here. Asks the Tosfos Yontef, ובפרשת נשוא כתיב שנשנה שם דין נשבע לשקם משום גזע הגר, etc. וגם רש"י ונומחי יוסף כוספו לזה המקרא, ותמני דלא נקטי מקרא שבפרשה ראשונה. Why does our Rashi bring the posuk from Parshas Naso instead of from Parshas Vayikra early on, 5 chapters earlier, where you've got the same wording? That's the source of it, and we know that Rashi knows that's the source of it because he says so in Bava Kama, and the Gemara says so in Bava Kama. Rashi himself says that in Bava Kama. And that's in fact in the Gemara in Kuf Gimel. In the 9th parak of Bava Kama, Mishnah Hey, the Rav says it clearly, and Rashi in Bava Kama on Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph explains the Mishnah that way. So why is Rashi using a different posuk here? That's the big question on Rashi. The other thing they ask on Rashi is, why do you need a posuk to say that you've got to return it yourself? We know that from elsewhere that you've got to return it yourself and not to shliach. Why does Rashi have to bring this posuk all together? The Vilna Gaon has a different way of learning a Gemara in Kiddushin. And through that different way of learning the Gemara in Kiddushin, I found this sefer by Rav Moshe Bunim Krois. He's about 100 years ago. He was a Rov in Switzerland. But one of the many things that are important about him, he was a great-grandson of the Chassam Sofer. His family from the Chassam Sofer was considered a very great Talmid Chochem, and a great tzaddik in his time. And he didn't publish a Sefer. These are his notes as he learned. There are a few notes as he goes through, and they've managed to collect them together and to publish them. And he uses the Vilna Gaon's unusual understanding of the Gemara in Kiddushin to answer up this Rashi and explain what Rashi is saying. Look how brilliant it is. The Gemara in Kiddushin says, Omar Shmuel, Kidsha B'tmara. If you go to a woman and you say, here is a date, you should be Mekudeshes Mikadash Mosev Yisrael. By a date, he doesn't mean we'll go on a date. He means literally a date from the shuk. Afilo made kur tamarim b'dinar, even if dates are so cheap that you can get a ton of dates for a dinner. Mekudeshet. Why? Maybe in Madai, a date is worth a pruta. Why Madai? Why doesn't the Gemara just say, because maybe, why doesn't Shmuel say, maybe somewhere in the world there's a place where it's worth a pruta? Why Madai? What is it about Madai? Rashi says, because there are no dates in Madai. So Rashi looks at it from the point of view that because dates are very expensive, the pruta is worth something there because you can get a date for, and the date is worth something because the dates are expensive. And we tend to look at money that way. How many dates can the money buy? Rather than how many prutas can a date buy? Because we've got to look at the value of money, not only in terms of how much commodity can the money buy, but how much cash can the commodity be sold for. In a country where money has lost its value, you can take your whole household of goods and sell it, and you need wheelbarrows to be able to take the money for it, because the money is valueless. You could take small things. You could get the fact if you could sell a small item for $100. That doesn't mean that your small item is worth a lot. It means the dollar is worth very little. And the Vilna Gaon understands it that way, different from the way Rashi explains it there. And if you look at the way I quote it from the Minchas Moshe, because I wasn't able to find the Vilna Gaon in time inside, and he brings this and he says, "V'nirilas daisi," in the second line, "Al pi ma shekosov hagro en kol Eliyahu shemedakdek halashon afilu lemadai v'lo amar afilu ad sof haolam." Asks the Vilna Gaon, why does the Gemara here, the Mishnah here say even to Madai? In the Kiddushin, that's also a question, but it's a question here. Why doesn't it say you've got to travel even to Siberia? You've got to travel even to Japan? Why doesn't it just say to a very distant land? If it's about geography, if it's about distance, just say you've got to travel even to a distant place. Why Madai? V'chein bi Kiddushin. V'tiretz al pi akra bi Yeshayahu. And the Vilna Gaon answers that. Madai is unique, which we can see from the Pasuk in Yeshayahu. Hineni meira lachem et Madai shekesef lo etc. V'hainu k'chamashman detzarich l'licho acharav afilu l'Madai after sham eino shove klum. You see from the Pasuk in Yeshayahu, money is worthless. So I'm going to go all the way to Madai to give this man a pruta. He's going to look at the pruta and say, what can I do with this pruta? Even if you gave me a bar of gold, I can't redeem a hostage. They don't value money in this place. They value human lives. They don't value money. Certainly not a pruta. But still you have to go there and you have to return the pruta. It's an amazing chidush of the Vilna Gaon. V'chein b'kiddushin kavanas hashatomat d'chashin Hashem hashav pruta b'madai d'machmat shamatbea lo chashuv sham, because money is not worth anything there. Klalim ken yachol liyot she'atzmara shava pruta. Because money is worthless, a date might be worth a pruta. You might be able to get a pruta even just for a date because the money is so worthless. V'yicholim la'asik sham pruta af ba'ad tzmara achar kach. And therefore says the Minchas Moshe, the posuk in Vayikra is in the plural. If you look, the difference between the two psukim there is v'chamishi tav yosif alav. The 20% in the plural you've got to add. And the Gemara on the previous Omud learned special things from that a fifth, upon a top of a fifth, on top of a fifth, that there are many fifths that apply to it. However, our posuk in Nasor says v'chamishi to yosif alav. And so explains the Minchas Moshe, there's a different chidush we learn from this posuk. From this posuk we learn that even if afilu im ha'ma'ot ma'at, even if it's worth very, very little, b'chol zeh tzarich lo licho acharav, afilu lemadai. You've got to take it back even to madai. So let's just ask ourselves quickly, what is the reason for that? Why do I have to take this money to a place where the money has lost its value altogether? So again, I've stole a pruta's worth of an item. So I have to give it back because pruta is money. The person from whom I stole it is now in Madai. I've got to go anywhere in the world to return it. There's no limit to what I've got to do to return it. For my kapara, this is not a law of Choshen Mishpat in the technical sense. It's not just because I owe it to him. It's because I owe it to my neshama. My neshama is saying, go and get that money back to him. Until that money is back to him, you're flawed. I'm flawed. Your neshama is flawed. And you say, what, by giving back a pruta, my neshama can come back to usual? Yes, but you've got to go to Madai. But a ticket to Madai costs $1,000. Tough. Is it not worth $1,000 to you to get shuvah, to get kapara, to get atonement? Sure it is. But I'll go to Madai all the way and I'll give him the pruta. He'll throw the pruta away. It's not worth anything. Says your neshama to you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is about you. It's not about him. You've got to return it. You've got to make sure that you're not holding in your hand something that belongs to somebody else, because that would be a terrible thing. And that's how we understand the value of money is determined not only by the currency markets. The value of money is also determined what it's worth to you, not only physically, but also spiritually.